Man, Midway sure did love producing remakes of beloved arcade classics back during the Big Green's heyday, didn't they? Area 51, Narc, Gauntlet. I'll get to that one eventually. Spy Hunter. Quite a crazy list. But there was one game Midway thought deserved the reboot treatment. The arcade gem known as Defender. Now normally, this is the part of the show where I'd give you a little backstory of the game we're talking about today. But this time, I've decided to recruit a little help. A fine gentleman who dabbles in different games with the same name.
Popka, my man. I have to say, I'm pretty flattered you think of me that way. Really excited to be working with you again.
Oh, hey Eric. I actually meant I was going to get Joe to do this one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I see. That's my fault. I'm a little embarrassed now. I was just thinking, we did the Lord of the Rings thing together and all.
No, yeah, totally. I truly appreciated your help on Lord of the Rings. It's just, I thought I'd give this one to Joe because in his videos he always loves to give a little history.
Hold it, Popka. That's my line.
Ah, there you are, Joe. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind giving a little backstory and perhaps a little mini review on the arcade classic Defender.
Yeah, sure. There's not a ton to talk about, but I'll do my best.
I'll see myself out.
So, Defender. You're probably familiar with it, at least in passing, but let's take a closer look. Defender is an arcade game released by Williams Electronics in 1980. At the time, Williams was known for pinball more than anything, with only one video game, a 1973 Pong clone called Paddleball, to their name. Williams, and the man they tapped to make their earnest entry into video games, Eugene Jarvis, effectively had no experience making pixel-based amusements. But in 1980, the writing was on the wall. Flippers were on the way out, and joysticks were in. Big time. To that point, Jarvis's most noteworthy contribution to gaming was doing the sound on Gorgar, the first talking pinball game. But he was up to the challenge of making a video game, so with a team of just a few people, he set about creating Defender. Space shooting games were big at the time, with Space Invaders having just set the world ablaze in 1978. But Jarvis wasn't content to make another Invaders clone, another Galaxian. No, he had higher aspirations. Defender would be the first horizontally scrolling space shooter, a genre that exploded in popularity throughout the 80s and into the 90s. It was also the first game to feature a mini-map, or at least the first extremely popular game to feature a mini-map, something that game players now tend to take for granted. Initially, there was some concern. Jarvis has spoken on many occasions about the reception, or lack thereof, at the Amusement and Music Operators Association trade show in November of 1980. People walked right past it. His interpretation? They were intimidated. Pac-Man came out in 1980 and was played with only a joystick. Defender, on the other hand, had a joystick to move your ship up and down, then 5 buttons, not including start. You have a thrust button to get your ship up to speed, a reverse button to turn around, a hyperspace button to jump across the map, though this can drop you right on top of an enemy, so I tend to avoid it, a fire button to shoot your ship's lasers, and finally, a smart bomb button to use one of your limited screen-clearing attacks. The goal is relatively simple: stop the invading aliens from abducting Earthlings. This is not an entirely different goal from one of Jarvis's later games, Robotron 2084. The catch is that while Robotron is a single-screen game, Defender scrolls, so the aliens can grab people while you're far away. But also, unlike Robotron, humans don't die as soon as they're touched. If you can shoot the aliens before they reach the top of the screen, you can catch the Earthlings and return them to terra firma for bonus points. The round ends when all the aliens are destroyed, and you move on to a new, harder round with more enemies until you reach round 255, and then the game starts over. The game ends when you lose all your lives, and no, you can't continue. Defender is generally thought of as one of the hardest classic arcade games, and I can't disagree. But it has that quality, that just one more game quality, that makes you want to give it another shot, beat your last score. And I'm clearly not the only one who thinks that. Defender is the 6th highest grossing arcade cabinet of all time, earning approximately $1 billion, one quarter at a time between 1980 and 1993. Being that big of a success, the game of course saw a myriad of ports, the most notable of which is probably the Atari 2600 version from Atari themselves. But none of these ports quite capture the intensity of the arcade original. As for Eugene Jarvis, he's still active in the gaming industry all these years later. He would never have another success as big as Defender, but to be honest, almost no one had a success as big as Defender to begin with. He did, however, have a series of smaller hits, but hits nonetheless, with games like Robotron 2084, Smash TV, Narc, and the Cruisin' series. He had nothing to do with the 2002 Defender remake.
Thanks, Joe. Much appreciated. So, as to be expected with Midway's reboot streak of the early 2000s, 2002 saw the release of Defender. But is this game just the classic with a fresh coat of polygonal paint, or is there more to it? Let's take a look and find out. Surprisingly, the story of the Defender reboot doesn't really stray away from the little bit of plot the arcade game had, just fleshing it out a bit. Earth is invaded by an alien swarm known as the Manti, consuming and mutating the human race. Those who survived escaped and formed a resistance known as the Galactic Stargate Authority, or GSA, and are stationed on Mars. By using jump gates, the GSA's elite pilots known as the Defenders, which you are a member of, must destroy the Manti and free not only Earth, but the solar system as well. When I first heard about this reboot, I thought, how can you give this a story? But, to my surprise, they did. It's not the best, but for what it's worth, it's a decent plot knowing exactly what it is that you're working with. Defender's gameplay has, for the most part, stayed intact as well, just with a 3D coat of paint. Your goal is to progress through each mission, taking place on numerous planets. Besides the usual take out enemies, escort tanks, or defending missions, there are also several human survivors that you must pick up and take to safety, making sure that the Manti doesn't get to them first. Saving humans not only earns you mission progress, but credits to buy new weapons, armor, and more for your ship. In a bit of a strategic touch, if you drop off humans at certain points, you'll receive different things. For example, taking them to a drop zone will net you power-ups like health and ammo refills, or tanks and soldiers at missile crawlers and tank factories, giving you a little bit of an edge against the Manti, which is pretty cool. Also, any saved humans also goes to new research for new ships, each with their own unique weapons and attributes. But be careful, as the Manti can do the same with any abducted humans that they keep. Lastly, there's local multiplayer where you and a friend can either fight each other to the death in deathmatch or work together in co-op missions. It's nothing amazing, but it's fun for a little bit. Even though the concept of a 3D Defender is, for the most part, fun to play, there are a few flaws that hold it back. Well, really just one: the controls. Flying your chosen ship, regardless of its personal stats, can be very floaty, which results in not being able to pull off effective maneuvers. Then again, the AI is so dumb that you could just strafe and shoot, making the evasive stunts kinda pointless. But this frustration will shine the most when you're trying to pick up health, items, and colonists. To pick up anything, you just fly into it. Pretty simple, however, due to the slippery controls, more often than not you'll just fly right by them, meaning you have to turn around and try again, costing you precious time. But if you can get around that, Defender is a pretty fun space shooter. Visually, Defender is decent for its time, with the planets you visit varying enough, although they mostly are a bit dark and muddy. Meanwhile, the ships you pilot look pretty nice, and the Manti enemies are decent looking enough. I mean, for as long as you can see them before you blow them to bits. Everything else, like colonists, tanks, and facilities, are just okay background scenery. On the audio side, the music is your standard techno beats that boom along as you play. One of the songs being a remix of the Defender theme by KMFDM, which is cool, but overall not a soundtrack that'll stick in your head. Thankfully though, this game is one of the lucky few that do allow custom soundtracks. With voice acting, there isn't much, but what you do hear is also okay enough. I will say I did get a chuckle or two from the commanding officer.
The good news is, you're not bad for a rookie. The bad news is, that's the only good news I got. You did well, but we still lost Sidonia, and I just got my orders for the full evacuation of Mars.
As far as game reboots that Midway had done during this time, Defender is one of the good ones. Yeah, the ships may control like melting butter in a hot pan, and it may not have an amazing story, but it's a 3D remake of an 80s arcade game. The fact this game exists is good enough, and with a really affordable pickup price, I say give it a try. It's worth your time. Well, that's another Midway reboot, remake thing done. I think I have 2 more of these left. I don't know. But we'll have to get to those later. I just wanted to say before I headed out, thank you, Joe, for stopping by and giving your little backstory on Defender and reviewing the arcade game. I really appreciate it.
Wait 1 second.
What is it, Eric? I'm just about to end here.
I found something that I can talk about on this episode for you.
Well, I mean, like what? Joe covered the 80s stuff. I covered the reboot. I mean, what else is left?
This, the Game Boy Advance version.
Oh, huh. Forgot about that. Probably due to the fact that Xbox and Game Boy Advance really don't have anything to do with each other. You know what? That's fine. That's fine. We'll go ahead and wrap this episode up with a look at the Game Boy Advance version of Defender. Take it away, Eric.
Defender on the GBA, aka Defender Saving the Human Race, was released in November 2002, right alongside the Xbox and other Defender 2002 releases. It's meant to be a portable version of the console version, but it does so by returning to the series' roots of side-scrolling arcade-style shooting, which is fine, but it doesn't really bring much to the party. Really, this game is classic Defender, with a few alternate and revamped modes. The primary game here is called XGP, which is the most different from the original, though not by much. Aside from the notably improved graphics, the controls are altered slightly and you're given some customization options. The biggest change, however, is the option to choose different ships, which carry different weapons, and which all can be useful in different areas. I've also seen reference that this game is technically a prequel to the other Defender 2002s, but the extent of the story is to save the humans from the invading ships, so the fact that it is a prequel is absolutely superfluous. Along with XGP, you get Classic, which is self-explanatory, and XG, which is really just a reskinned Classic with graphics that make it look somehow even more generic. Lastly, there's also a co-op XGP mode, which I wasn't able to try out. But it's at least there if you know someone else with this cart and you're super into playing 2-player Defender over a link cable. And that's about it. Not worth it, to be honest, unless you really need a Defender fix on the go, but even still, there's better ways to fill your on-the-go GBA time.
Thank you for that, Eric. It looked interesting enough, although I'm sorry you had to play that. It actually... who am I kidding? That was terrible.
It's alright, I just wanted to help out.
Well, I do appreciate it, and who knows, maybe down the road you and I can do a video where you compare a game that I'm doing and, you know, it's not Defender.
That sounds awesome. I can't wait.
And with that, this is the Dali Popka.
And Eric from Game vs. Game.
And Joe from Same Name, Different Game.
If you want to play retro, try going green. I'll see you next time.